You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I am your host, Kathy Biasi, and I am an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. On today's show, our guest is Evan Transue, and we are talking about an area in healthcare that I personally feel needs to be explored more as we journey through our health and our life, and that is spirituality. Whether it's a starting point or a turning point, studies are bearing out that spirituality, coupled with positive health-related behaviors, can be a powerful and impactful tool as we aim for the holy grail of optimal health. Evan is the host of the Health Detective podcast and owner of Bucks County Light Therapy and Functional Medicine Center. He graduated from Functional Diagnostic Nutrition in 2017. Prior to finding FDN, he and his mom had suffered with a variety of health challenges for over a decade. The FDN system transformed his and his mom's lives so profoundly that all of his work is now centered around speaking its teachings. Evan speaks professionally to middle and high school students about mental health challenges and to date has spoken to over 50,000 students. Some of the big talking points that we land on are perseverance in the face of health challenges, spirituality and its intersection with health, expansive health versus contractive health. It really is a wonderful show. I do hope you can join us. We will be back in just a few minutes to talk with Evan Transue.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Today's show has been recorded. No opportunity for calling in, but please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC. And do subscribe to our podcast. We are on, most of the podcast platforms that you would be familiar with, SoundCloud, iTunes. We would love the follow and the positive feedback. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your story is such an interesting one, and I think it really bears shedding light on because the triumph of the human spirit when you're dealing and to not give up. I think this is one of the key things, and then of course all the knowledge that you've received and learned through perseverance is something that can really inspire people. Can you go into detail about your health journey from a very, very young age?
Yeah. So starting at around 5 years old is when the first health symptoms presented. And if I looked back and, I've talked to my parents extensively about this, we really tried to nail this down. It's tough to say precisely what came first, but what we know for a fact is that around 5 years old, at some point during the month, I would have had a panic attack, I would have had a migraine, and I would have had more than a upset stomach, but severe stomach pain to the point where it's like, okay, do we go to the hospital for something like this? Now, what was kind of interesting from the 5-year-old perspective is that it didn't happen that often. Like, it wasn't that this stuff was going on every single day. From what I remember and what my parents remember, 95+% of the time, everything was okay. And I'm a happy kid that goes to school, gets good grades there, has good friends. I'm not like amazing at sports, but I do some recreational ones. I had a very normal, happy life on paper. What started to happen though is as I got older, the issues started getting worse and worse. So, particularly for the panic attacks, we went to the doctor at 5 years old, the doctor, our family's doctor. And this was a well meaning person. I still know this individual to this day. I can't stress enough, I'm not against Western medicine or this individual, but people miss things. Doctors are fallible humans as well. That's kind of how we all are. We went in for the panic attack thing specifically, not knowing what a panic attack was. Kathy, I'm 28 now, which is still young, but remember, we're talking 23 years ago. So for those listening, 2+ decades ago, just try to think about what the perception of mental health was, right? People weren't talking about this in the same way, and you definitely didn't want to talk about it if you did experience it. We didn't know what mental health was, my parents and I. We just knew Evan gets this thing where he can't breathe, he's freaking out, and then 20 minutes later, he seems to be fine, but he's pretty overwhelmed by what just happened. So we go there, and kind of the biggest thing that led to like lifelong issues was the doctor said this isn't something to worry about. Ev just gets himself a little too worked up and he's going to outgrow this. Again, well-meaning person that didn't even think this 5-year-old kid could be dealing with panic attacks. So it wasn't a dismissive nature, or wasn't a dismissive statement saying that, oh, he can't be dealing with panic attacks. That word never came up. He thought I was just getting myself too worked up from being a kid. Well, I never forgot that. And we forget a lot of things from 5 years old, if not most of the things. But that stuck with me because as I got worse and worse, Kathy, I started to get this idea in my head that if, smart doctor person can't figure this out, I must be the problem. Because I'm not getting better, like he said. I'm not outgrowing this like he promised. I'm getting worse. And I think even as adults, we put doctors on pedestals. They are very intelligent. They're highly educated. They make exceptional income. These people are winning in a lot of standards of society. So that perception and that bias also translates to kids as well. I had this idea that if he can't figure it out and it's not working the way that he said, I must be the issue. So the worse my health issues got, particularly the mental health ones, the more I hid them. And by the time I was 15, so we're talking a full decade there. By the time I was 15, the panic attacks are now daily. I met the criteria for major depressive disorder and would eventually be diagnosed with that a few years later. Like I said, panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. And then by the age of 18, and I'm fast forwarding a little bit today, obviously for the show, by the age of 18, I had 7 different diagnosed conditions, both mental and physical. So I started participating, if you'll call it that, with the doctors again. And they just started throwing labels on. And those labels were accurate from a Western medicine perspective. So they were correct. But at some point, and it got me into all this stuff, and that's why I'm doing podcasts like this now and all the other things that I do in the health space, I started to just ask, how is it that I could have 7 different conditions that are all somehow unrelated? How is that even possible that I could be the best of the best genetically? That's what my science teacher just taught me 2 years ago, right? Natural selection, all this stuff, evolution. I'm the best of the best genetics. So is every one of my classmates. That's how we got here. And yet I'm sitting here with 7 different diagnosed conditions. And there's not a chance in hell I would have survived in the wild in this state that I'm currently in. I didn't buy that was the best of the best genetics. And I'm making it sound like more of a profound thought now than it probably was at the time. It was more that I couldn't buy it, Kathy. Like I could not accept that this was my life and that this was just going to continue to get worse over time. So it ended up with a lot of different things. Like I said, I'm summarizing today, but I got into drugs and alcohol, mostly because of the mental health issues. That was my coping mechanism since I didn't talk about these things. And it wound up with me getting kicked out of school 17 days into my senior year of high school. And thank God, about 6 months later, I got involved with some other young people. They were a few years older than me, but young nonetheless. And they were very big into personal development. And I know, Kathy, you wanted to talk today about, what you labeled, I love this word, the spiritual side of all this stuff. That came for me before the health side. I got into the personal development and developing your mindset right before I got into the health stuff. And quite frankly, I don't think I'd be here today without my 7 diagnosed conditions. I don't meet the diagnostic criteria for them anymore. I don't think I'd be here today being able to say that and being able to get on podcasts like this and speak if it wasn't for getting into that personal development stuff first. So there is a, 9-hour story and hopefully, less than 9 minutes.
No, and so much, to pull apart from that. Evan, the question that pops up into my mind. So you were diagnosed with 7 different physiological issues, is that correct? And then
Correct.
the mental health issues. What came
Including
first, the
health,
chicken or the egg? Was it a reaction to a physiological pain or discomfort or unsettling that caused the panic attacks and then a spiraling out? Do you know that at this point?
I think it's a good question. I think it would be arrogant of me to say I know exactly what caused all of this. What I do know is, okay, if I got all of this stuff better and I don't have these things anymore, what worked, right? What would actually change those things? And I mean, one, again, getting into the quote unquote spiritual side of this, the mindset side of this, that was essential. So we can always start with that. And I have to remember how big of a part that is. From the purely biochemical side of all this, it was changing the diet, right? It was changing the water. It's changing the sleep cycle. That was the main stuff. And it doesn't change overnight. It's not like I changed these habits or lifestyle factors and then all of a sudden I don't have these conditions. I just started to watch myself get 5% better. And then it's 20%. And then it's 30%. And you're like, well, why would I stop this? This is still working. And then if it stops working or gets stagnant, then you experiment with some other things. You're like, well, I got to 30%. Is that really what I'm destined to? I can't get to 31% better. I just took this very innocent, very curious approach, just like I did at 18. Am I really supposed to have all these conditions? Does that actually make sense if I'm the best of the best genetics? So it's not like I went into some genius or PhD or doctor. I just went in with curiosity and kept saying, all right, well, if I'm getting a little better, why can't I get more better? That's just how I worded it. And so the answer is I don't know precisely if there's one thing here that led to all of this to begin with. My broad blanket answer is that I think certain people genetically, not to say that the genes are the ultimatum in all of this, but I do think that certain people genetically are more prone to being affected by the insane things that we're doing in today's world, the chemicals in the food, the staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning, the addictive blue lit screens. I mean, stuff that people have heard before, probably listening to a show like this. That kind of stuff, I think some of us are more prone to it being a negative thing than others. I think everyone's affected by it. I just think some feel the effects of it first. I think that's what happened to me. And so I had to get back to living as much in alignment with nature as I could. And that's a little ironic as I'm sitting here on, an overly priced microphone talking to you from, states and countries away. But seriously, I really do try to live in alignment with nature as much as possible. That's what allowed me to get better.
I'm sure you've worked with people who have had some type of an epiphany that has changed their life, and then they hold on to that change and that moment in time as something that they always want to go back to. A lot of time we call that the spiritual awakening. The other side of this moment in time is that people can get fixated on that. Have you broadened? So you've had this spiritual thing, which I definitely want to go back to. You've had a spiritual awakening, but have you been able to add more and more and more so that you have broadened out as opposed to going down one pathway?
I'm very, I'm curious. Can you give me an example or reword it? What do you mean by staying in a narrow lane with that and then going out more? I'm curious.
Somebody has had a health issue and they have found that eating a particular way is what has changed things for them. And then for a long period, if not forever, it's this fixation on this is how I must eat. And this is what has changed me. And this is my path, which can lead to more things, positive and negative. Once you make this turn into the health space, or once you make this turn into a positive health space, is it important, do you think, to continue to investigate, to broaden, to widen?
Okay, got it. First of all, it's a brilliant observation because this is so common in this space, right? And you have to be in
Mm-hmm.
it for a while to really see this. So, I
Yes,
don't think I've ever
yes.
been asked that, Kathy. That's a great question. With that said, I had to watch that in myself. So the answer is yes, I've seen it, and I do think I have somewhat of a solution to it. The the thing that I did, and I think this is the problem, when people are really sick, and we find, including myself, something that works, of
Mhm.
course, we're gonna hold on to that like a life vest or something, a raft that was thrown into the water. We're drowning. Something just got thrown in. It's the only thing keeping us afloat. It is so clear how people become dogmatic around
Mhm.
certain dietary theories or this supplement or whatever it is. If you're out here drowning and you finally found the thing that helps you stay afloat, it's only human to want to shout it from the rooftops. And of
Mhm.
course, it's human as well to hold on to it because you almost think that you need it now because you never want to go back to drowning. And it's funny that you said this because I didn't understand the question at first, but now that I do, I made a promise to myself when I first got into this because I was reading about again, I was coming in with like this childlike curiosity and innocence. I'm reading about paleo. I'm reading about vegan. I'm reading about keto. I did not give a crap what the answer was, in a sense. I just wanted to know what would work for me. And when I say I didn't give a crap what the answer was, obviously I want to know the answer, but I meant I wasn't biased towards, oh, I only like eating meat or I don't want to eat meat or anything like that. And I respect both sides that have those opinions. But to me, it was just, I want to know what's going to get me better. And so even though I promised myself that, I found that over many years, I'm like, Ev, you're down to a very restricted diet. And maybe this restricted diet did serve you at one point. I'm not denying that. I think it did.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think it does for a lot of people. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Why the hell would they? But at some point, you got to remember that the idea here is healing. If I'm healing, that implies that eventually there should be more balance. It shouldn't be pure restriction. I should be going back in time here and getting a little bit healthier. It's not like I'm just managing symptoms because really, if you think about that, if you restrict yourself to one diet or one thing, and you always need that for the rest of your life, well, in a sense, that probably is a sign that there's not real healing going on. You should have some flexibility. Why can someone like my dad, who I love very much, go out and smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day? He works as a
Mhm.
landscaper. He's outside all the time, so he gets the resilience from that. But like his body is not suffering from the things that he's doing, even though he looks very healthy right now. He's able to balance it to some degree, and eventually it's going to overload on one way. So the body can handle some bad things, guys. That's all good. It's not that we have to be restrictive forever. So I think what I needed was, and I don't know if this would work for everyone. I think what I needed is the courage for myself to receive messages from others when they said, "Hey, Ev, you know what, man, you're not like you're talking in the past tense almost now. Like you're telling stories to me or you're saying things to me that aren't true today." And Kathy, the biggest one for me that got me is I had severe cystic acne. That was one of the parts of my story. And I remember saying to my friend, we were at the gym together, and I said to him, this was just like 4 years ago. I said, yeah, man, well, like since I have like skin issues and stuff, I don't really want to do, I was making an excuse for XYZ thing. And he said, bro, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, like I have acne and stuff. He's like, dude, I don't like, where do you have, oh, you got like one little thing under your chest. Like, bro, I don't look at you as someone who has acne anymore. I've known you this entire time. I knew you when your skin was really bad. Like, I think you're in your head about this. And I
Mhm.
looked this up, and most of us have heard of body dysmorphia, which is when,
Mhm.
the bodybuilders think they're not big enough, or unfortunately, people with anorexia might not think that they're small enough, even though both these people are dying in a different sense. I actually found that there's something called acne dysmorphia. Now, the reason that's relevant to this conversation is because I was still living in the past, but nothing in the present that I was exhibiting actually showed that that was accurate or necessary is the right word anymore. And that conversation with a friend of him saying, dude, you don't like, what are you talking about? You don't have skin issues. I really almost had to look in the mirror and say, what the hell am I seeing here? I don't have skin issues. This is crazy. This is not what I used to deal with. And it opened me up to this idea that maybe I didn't need to be as restrictive as I once was, or maybe I could go back to balancing things. And, some listeners might like this, some might not. I went from not eating dairy for 6, 7 years to, I have raw milk a lot. I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's one of the states that they can actually sell it in a store. I enjoy raw milk. It works for me. It's doing okay.
Mhm.
I ate out about 4 times per year, and it was at very specific restaurants that I knew well, it really was just the same restaurant. It was the same one 4 times a year, basically, for special events that I knew would meet my dietary restrictions. And now my fiance and I, we go out all the time, and I'm careful. I'm not saying that I'm reckless, but I'm not quite as neurotic as I was before. So my answer, and as you can tell, I'm not trying to not give a straight answer, but I'm almost exploring the answer in my own head as I'm giving it. I
Yeah.
think what I'm trying to say here is we need to keep some track, whether that's journaling, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, if that's how your mind works, or it's the external feedback from people that we know, love, and trust that would give us the right answer anyway. Like my friend would tell me in a respectful way, "Hey, bro, yeah, no, your skin's looking a little rough right now. Like, what can I do to help?" He wouldn't judge me, but he would say that. And at the same time, he's the one to say, "Bro, your skin looks great. Like, what are you talking about, man? I didn't even know that you had acne. You had a pimple under your chin. Like, who cares? Everyone has that." Right? The way that he looks at it, at least. So we need something that is going to show us the progress that we've made. And I think that's the secret. Because if we can see that we're no longer on, square one, we're on like square 100. Well, guess what, man? We can have a little more flexibility in our life, and it can prevent the dogma with the different dietary stuff. I watched a very good friend of mine pass away from dietary dogma. At least that's what I believe it was. She never gave up a diet that used to be therapeutic for her when she had cancer. And I think, ironically, it's the thing that killed her a couple of years ago. So, Kathy, I'm going to pause. I'm sorry. That's a new answer for me. And like I said, I've never been asked the question, so I'm exploring it. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Oh, 100%. And we
Oh,
could
good.
do this. We could do this show for 3 hours because of, yeah, this is exactly, have you heard the term leading the horse to water? This is exactly the path I wanted you to go down because there is there are blogs, there are so-called professionals out there. They've had a turn in their health and they profess eating 25 salads a day or juicing, and then that gets you on. You grab onto this, and you are afraid to explore. And when you have a health issue, I have had a health issue. I work with people that have serious health issues. It can be so limiting and pigeonholing because you're looking for those things that just are going to get you through. And I think where we need to maybe explore a bit more and then go into, ways to move beyond is that spiritual piece. Because when we can include that, and I have been seeing, dribbles and drabbles of science now talking about spiritual health and mindset for true healing. And this is coming from medical journals.
Mhm.
This is the place I think we need to really explore. Now, we're not talking about, I'm a person with chronic colds or have strep. We're talking about people that have had serious health issues, that have had to battle and fight, and they find that thing that's finally helped them turn the corner. You can't stop there. And I think the piece is the spiritual place that we need to examine, because if we just stop, all you are doing in life is dealing with your health problem. And that's not what our short period of time on this earth is about. It is about living life. So opening up the doors as opposed to turning down a hallway. So we're going to take a quick break. We could talk about this but we have to take a quick break. So everybody, we will be back in just a few minutes to continue our conversation with Evan.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. We are talking with Evan Transue. We're going to continue along this path. I just think it's such an untapped area to talk about. So, Evan, I don't want to stand in your way here. I want you to continue on. Talk about how you went from constantly being this person who was perpetually worried about health to getting to that space where you are, yes, you're working towards your healthiest life, but you're also living life. How can you tell us that you found that balance? It will be different for everybody.
Yeah, well, in case someone's just tuning in, the brief of it is I had an experience, or a conversation rather, with a friend where I realized things that I perceived to be true about my health still were objectively, not subjectively, objectively no longer true. And it made me really dive deep into the mindset side of this and say, why, what is this? Why do I feel this way? What's going on? And this is a tough conversation. And so I'll speak only from personal experience and people can receive it for them if it's relevant, and maybe it's not relevant for them. I'm not them, so I don't know. I think what occurs, especially when we deal with severe health issues, or if it's been there's been a really long time that we've been dealing with health issues. So, for example, myself, 5 years old, my identity started to become someone that has things going on. Certainly by my mid-teenage years, my identity was associated with someone who has stuff going on. I'm someone who's suffering. I'm identifying myself as a victim. And I said it's a tough conversation because I think what occurs, I know it occurred in me, but I think what occurs in many people is we become comfortable or stagnant even in things that are very uncomfortable. So this is not to say that anyone wishes for depression like I had. This is not to say that anyone wishes for severe cystic acne. That's, humiliating levels of skin issues. No one wishes for that. No one wishes for the cancer, autoimmune, whatever. But once we have it, it's human nature to adapt. So this isn't even necessarily your fault. That's not what I'm saying. But it's human nature to adapt. And I think we learn to get the benefits, if there are any, of what we might be dealing with. So here's what I mean. I didn't date for almost 5 or 6 years after high school. I had this high school girlfriend that I loved, didn't work out with the drugs and alcohol thing, didn't date for 5, 6 years. And I didn't even try. Maybe if I tried, I would have gotten rejected. I'm not sure. But at the time, I wasn't even trying. And what young male do you know that doesn't want to date anyone? And what I started to realize was this. The acne in particular, again, I had a bunch of health issues, but the acne in particular became my excuse to not work on other things. And what I mean is by identifying as someone who had severe skin issues, that was a logical enough reason why someone wouldn't want to date you. And no, I'm not being mean to anyone out there that deals with this. I try to be objective and try to be real. I think it's fair to say that if someone has, hundreds of breakouts at any given time on their face, and you're just meeting that person, no, most of us are not really going to consider that person to be a potential mate, even if they have an amazing personality and all this other stuff that we would have liked. We're never even going to get there because we probably won't give them a time of day. I don't necessarily think you're a bad human for that. I wouldn't do it, and I dealt with it myself. And so the thing that I started to do, Kathy, that I noticed, and this is just one example of many because we only have so much time today, I started to realize that I kept the identity of the acne person. And even crazier is I found that under times of stress, I would actually eat foods or do things bad stuff, like stupid stuff for anyone, let alone someone that had health issues. I would do things that I believed or knew would trigger skin issues. And then I would use that as the excuse as to why I couldn't go do the thing I needed to do. Because to me, and again, this is all subconscious at the time. I'm speaking about this now as it's so matter of fact.
I'm sure it resonates. Health becoming a crutch. It really does.
Yes. Yeah. It wasn't so clear back then. But I was able to reject myself from dating or pursuing anyone before they could reject me. Because if I had the skin issues, it makes sense. I would reject someone like that too. If I'm just meeting them, right? If my fiance now, I'm thankfully engaged. This all worked out, I promise. If she all of a sudden started getting severe skin issues, you don't leave someone for that, but you don't necessarily start something with someone when they're dealing with that. So as long as I had that excuse of, well, you know what, I don't look great. So of course anyone would reject this. Anyone would reject this if they had this right now. Then I was able to completely dismiss all the other flaws and all the other things I didn't want to work on because they can't reject me now. Oh no, they rejected the skin. And so why would I even pursue them? Why would I even try to date someone? Even though I wanted to at my core, it was a big thing. And again, this can apply with different issues. Depression, again, no one wishes these things, guys. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we adapt when we have something. And so, you know what a depressed and anxious person doesn't do, Kathy? They don't go out and public speak. They don't go out and pursue their passions. They don't go out and work hard, generally speaking, to, really make something out of their life when all these bad things happen, getting arrested, kicked out of school, all this crap. I started to use that as the crutch for why I couldn't get better. And so the health issues were real, that they were real experiences. I didn't ask for them. I didn't have these crutches before they existed. That is true. But somewhere on the course of this journey, I allowed myself to use these things as the reason I couldn't get to the next level. And so you're led to this very awkward place. I think for people that have been in this journey for a while with their own health issues, you're led to this very awkward place where you can no longer deny that your symptoms are either dramatically better or no longer existent. In my case, they were no longer existent. And yet I still have the crutch part of this here. So I'm not getting better in the other ways in my life that I should, but I don't even have the health issues. So you can only make the excuses for so long before your buddy's standing there in the gym and says, bro, you don't have skin issues anymore. What are you talking about? Well, oh, wait. And then you say this in your head, I need skin issues because this is the reason I don't date, right? This is the reason I've been single for 6 years when all my friends have girlfriends and all my girlfriends have boyfriends, right? Oh, I have to actually go do something about this now. So it's uncomfortable. But if you can get past the health issues, and then if you can get over the crutches that some of those health issues create in us, oh my gosh, man, people will look at you and think you're superhuman. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect today. I got a million things to work off. I'm a very flawed human being. But it's such a powerful thing to have that realization and try to just look at it with love. And I don't mean that, overly dramatically. I'm not a cheesy person like that. Some people are very into it. I don't judge it, but I don't mean that any more than it sounds. Like, you just approach it with love in the sense that you wouldn't judge your family member for going through that. Don't judge yourself, but you need to realize it. And you need to think about, what are these crutches allowing me to hide from? What are these crutches allowing me to say I can't do? And then it's time to go do that crap.
So how do we open up? You talked about journaling. You talked about, if you can fall in with the right group of people, you're very vulnerable at that state. You're very vulnerable. And so you do have to be aware of that, and awareness is important. But you talked about journaling, you talked about moving into spaces where you're taking more control. You're deciding to take more control. What did you start to incorporate in your health space? So we talked about the spiritual part, but once you had that, that sort of, I need to be more involved. I need to turn that corner. I need to stop using these things as a crutch. How did you start piecing the pathway to better health?
Well, it's worth keeping in mind that my health was probably, again, at this point in my journey, I do not even meet the diagnostic criteria for any of the health issues that I used to have. So that's true. But it's also fair to say that I had about like 10% lingering symptoms. And what that means is, if I went away from my routine for any reason at any time, then it seemed to trigger a variety of different symptoms. I could have a day or a week where I feel depressed. I could have a breakout or something like that. And so I needed to start testing the waters. I needed to start testing what it would be like to actually live a truly balanced life. And so for me, this might look different for everyone. You got to do something that you don't want to be completely uncomfortable to the point where you're freaking traumatized. That's not going to help. But you need to do something that's slightly uncomfortable, slightly different than what you're used to. So, for example, I had in my head, I can never eat certain food groups again. And guess what? If you have real like allergies or whatever it might be, that might be accurate. So there's fine lines with all this. I still don't voluntarily eat gluten. Me and my mom have a nasty immune reaction to that. That's not the game I'm going to play. But I realized, for me, again, going back to the dairy thing, and this not saying everyone should consume dairy. It's not what I'm arguing. But I had nothing objective to show that this was something that I was reacting to. I had just read stuff online. I actually did food sensitivity testing, like actual testing, that showed I wasn't sensitive. But I had in my head that this, along with 100 other foods, were some of the foods that were triggering my acne and other health symptoms. So I'm going to stop that. So I started with just that. I'm like, all right, what does a little bit of yogurt do? And I had some yogurt, and the next day I was fine. All good quality stuff, all high quality, to be clear, but I was fine. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'll have some yogurt again this week. And that was fine. And then it's turned into a point where, a couple of years after this, I'm now, able to consume dairy regularly. I don't have negative effects from it. If anything, it's really nice to have a whole nother, basically a food group back in, and that works out great. There was also a time where, I was down, without exaggeration, Kathy, probably down to like 6 or 7 foods that I was eating consistently. And so for me, almost anything was up just by adding in that 8th food and seeing that, Ev, come on, man, you still feel good when you're doing this. Like, you're not reacting to this. You're not getting breakouts. All right, do the 8th thing, then the 9th, like little steps here and here. And also just putting myself out there. Having the courage to take those little steps, just going and meeting people. So if you go from 6 years of not dating, I'm not saying, go on a dating app and start talking to 2,000 people in the next month. That's not what I'm suggesting. But you put yourself out there in a place where you could at least meet someone. Like, I was living such an isolated life. I had the same little group of friends. I went to work and didn't talk to anyone there. There was not even a chance I was going to meet someone that I could have been compatible with. So it started with that. And I actually ended up dating this person. And she was really sweet. She's a good person. It didn't work out long term. Both of us were actually getting into something for the first time in years. So I think it was a healing thing for us. And you need to accept that that might be part of the journey too. And that healing stepping stone, I hope to God that it led to good things for her. To me, it led to a fiance. The person that I met next, I was healthier coming in. I was more confident coming in. And that's healing in and of itself, right? When you start to solve these old problems and these old things that you used to hide with crutches, like, oh, I can't date anyone, to now, oh my gosh, I'm engaged to this wonderful, beautiful woman. It's really, really empowering and cool. So the journaling is great. Taking these little steps is great. I also want to suggest, and this isn't something I came up with. I forget who the hell said this. I saw this online the one time. I think it's brilliant though, because I think we can do this in any area of our life. But the person basically said something along the lines of, lay in your bed or sit in your bed, whatever you're comfortable with. No phone, no TV, no external sounds, nothing nothing going on, just silence. And you asked yourself, what's one thing that I could do right now to improve my finances? What's one thing that I could do right now to improve my relationship with Maddie? So my fiance, Maddie. What's one thing I could do to improve my relationship with her? What's one thing that I could do to improve my health? What's one thing that I can do to improve my spiritual development? And you can, keep adding things in. What's profound about this, and this is someone, Kathy, who loves the lab testing. That's something that I do on a daily basis, basically, for work. But I have never in my life met the person yet who can't answer those questions. They might not have, maybe they don't know, the financial secrets of the top people that are billionaires. I get that. But if I asked you right now, what's one thing that Kathy can do better for her finances? What's one thing Evan can do better for his finances? We have an answer. We literally can answer that somewhat quickly. So I think we're so damn busy, so distracted, and so stimulated all the time. Even if we wanted to ask those questions, we don't have the time to. We're not actually calming our minds enough. And then most of us don't want to ask the question. So if nothing else, I guess this would be the straightforward answer. Have the courage to ask yourself that question in silence and really see what comes up. Because I swear on my life, you know the answer. You know something that can get you in the right direction. And what's interesting is, since I've never met someone that can't answer those questions yet, it almost implies, do you ever run out of answers? Is there ever really a point where you could ask yourself that question and not give yourself an answer? And then what that implies is that there's really no limit on how much better you can get health-wise.
And the evolution, not even getting better. I mean, as we age, our health changes. And I shared with you off air, one of the things I battle with all the time is I am a cancer survivor. Does that mean, is there a real short runway for me? How do I continue to? We all have something. We all do. You can look at someone and say they have a perfect life. I can tell you that there's always something that somebody is dealing with. And I think to approach things in the expansive versus the contraction, sometimes you have to contract to expand, though, don't you? You know what? Your lungs go in, the lungs go out. There's nothing wrong with that contractive period, but don't limit yourself to the expansive period. I think this is such a great show because it's not talked about. And we're unfortunately getting to the end of the show. And we haven't even talked about what you do and how your business has fit into all that we've talked about. So I want to give you that space to talk about what you do and why it's profound for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a lot to say. Isn't that how it goes? So I appreciate you as an interviewer. But what I do now is I try to combine a bunch of things. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I genuinely try to have the humility to know when someone's needs might not be best served by me. So I actually refer out quite a bit for people that call us. And so here's what I mean. I got certified through a company called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And Reed Davis, the founder of that, was already on the show. I host the podcast there for us. So we interview people who have been through these unbelievable health challenges and then have overcome it and gotten to the other side. When I'm not doing that, I do some professional speaking. So I speak in schools. And when I'm not doing those things, and I know that sounds like a lot, but realistically, it's there's only so much time that you spend podcasting every week. There's only so much time that you can spend doing a presentation. So when I'm not doing that, my fiance and I, and our business partner as well, all three of us have a business called Bucks County Light Therapy and Functional Medicine Center. That's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's 50 minutes an hour northeast of Philadelphia. So The reason that's relevant to anyone listening is because we actually do online stuff as well. And so the online consults include functional lab testing. This is stuff that people can get delivered right to their house. They actually can test in the comfort of their own homes and they send it back out. So in any good business, if you guys know this, you have to have a niche, right? You don't want to talk to everyone, otherwise you talk to no one. So on our website, you can see that we specialize in the skin issues side of things. We talk about acne, eczema, psoriasis, etc. And we can very much help with that. But the truth of the matter is we end up getting autoimmune clients. We get mental health clients. We get people that have been through such a large variety of stuff. And our foundation is the lab testing. Don't get me wrong. But there's little things that you learn to pick up on after years and years of doing this, where we always do free consultation calls. It's genuinely free, and we're not hitting you with some BS pitch or doing something crazy like you need to buy right now. That doesn't work for anyone. That doesn't ever work in one-on-one coaching, because if you push someone into something they didn't want to do, you got to talk to them the next week, right? So that's really not a good idea for either party. So what we're really doing on those consultation calls and why we do them for free is because it's mutually beneficial. I need to see what are the exact needs of this person. Most of the people that end up calling us can be benefited by lab testing. Some, that might even be the main thing that they need at that time in their life. Some come to us very spiritually aware and very spiritually developed. Others, I'm like, this isn't a lab test problem, at least not right now. I'm sure I could find some stuff on the labs that looks crazy and I can help you with it, but I think you're going to be back to square one, in a matter of months. And the one client I didn't, I guess, screen well enough. Admittedly, we were already in our coaching and I had to just say, hey, we got to figure something else out here. So I'll help you get to these people and get to these places. We'll refund what we need to refund because this isn't a good fit. You're not a lab test client. You need help with some other stuff. So we just run people through a time-tested system. Reed did this with over 11,000 people before he ever taught it to practitioners. It's the thing that helped me most in getting to my 80-90% health completion. And, we talked about the other 10 to 20% that I use today. And to be clear, I've heard people that it was the opposite. 80% of this for them was a spiritual thing. 20% was the lab testing and, these dietary lifestyle changes. So who we really serve, yes, skin issues, fine. And we can definitely help you with that. But it's people that have been through the ringer with their health challenges, people that have tried every little different thing. They might have autoimmunity, they might have mental health, they might have skin issues or gut issues, and they want to go to the last person they ever need to go to. So that might be me, or I might refer you to the person who that might be. But that's our personal guarantee at the business. We never want you having to go to a million other people after you're done with us.
So from your point of view, are you the last person somebody should see or the first person somebody should see? In context with what we've just been talking about.
That is a good question. I guess it could be both, but in terms of seeing, I don't count the free discovery call necessarily as seeing. So what I just meant is like, we will always honestly refer them to the person that hopefully will be the last one that they need. Or you'll be working in conjunction with that person at the same time. There's some people that, it's hard to quantify this stuff. Yeah, you know what? They might be at a 50-50 in terms of they need some spiritual stuff, but they also need the lab testing side of things and really diving into that. We'll work in conjunction. So what I mean is there's this merry-go-round of practitioners thing. Like you'll see people just on this loop and on this cycle forever. And they come to you and they're like, I've been to 10 different practitioners over 8 years. What I really meant and should have said is that's what we want to prevent. I don't want this to be an 8-year thing for anyone. So we can get you the resources that you need, whether it's us or someone else, so that you're on the right track immediately. And, even if you're super, super sick, a year from now, you can be looking back and saying, wow, I'm in the best health I've ever been. So it'd be nice if they were the first, but I don't think it always happens like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, sometimes you have to be in a place where you can receive knowledge like this, from testing. And some people that's where they want to start. And some people, that's where they want to sort of put the bow on a long journey. Again, knowing that health ebbs and weaves and bows and in this time of our world, information is coming out on a daily basis on things that can be done for health. So, but the one thing that holds true in all of it, I do think, is the spiritual piece. That is the one solid piece that is not spoken about as much as I feel it needs to be, because we have to open up and see what our life is. Our life, we are here for a short period of time on this world, and we want to be able to enjoy it. We have to deal, we have to adjust, but the overall thing is we want to be able to enjoy our life and open up. So thank you so much for a really, really great conversation. I really enjoyed having you on the show, Evan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada.